Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of my UEFA Women's Champions League preview. If you haven't seen it yet, please be sure to check out my first video that focused on groups A and B, and I also spoke about the scheduling issue that affected Chelsea and Manchester United at the weekend. Now in this video, I'll be discussing the remaining 2 groups in the UEFA Women's Champions League, specifically groups C and D, who will be playing their first group stage games of the season this Wednesday. So let's just jump straight into it. First off, I'll start with Bayern versus Arsenal. This is a Group C matchup, which I'm so excited to see. The last time these two teams faced off was 2 years ago in the quarterfinals. Bayern had the first win at home, and then they went back to the Emirates, and Arsenal was able to win 2-0 and eliminated Bayern from the competition. And so if you're Bayern, you're trying to exercise some demons for sure, especially after Bayern had a very disappointing Champions League last year where they didn't make it out of the group stages. And then you've got Arsenal, who had an even more disappointing Champions League when they didn't even make it past the qualifiers. And so I think both of these teams are hungry to get a win, hungry to start off on the right foot, which is why I'm so excited to see these two teams play. I think Bayern has had an excellent start to the season in the Frauen Bundesliga. The thing that I've always questioned about Bayern is goal scoring. When I think about like who are the clinical strikers, Leah Schuler is not quite up there. She's not like Alex Pop. She's not like Sam Kerr. She's not like Bunny Shaw. You know what I mean? And so that's always been a question mark for me with Bayern until this season. This season is probably the first time where I feel quite confident in their ability to get goals. In the 4 games they've played in the Frauen Bundesliga, they've scored 17 goals, which I believe last time I checked was 4 more than the team in second place. And so they have been clinical in front of net. And I think that is absolutely going to help them in Champions League this year. For Arsenal, this is a massive tournament for them. It was very disappointing that they didn't qualify last year to the group stage. And so, of course, they want to do better this year, especially considering the year before that, they made it all the way to the semifinals, and they were a minute away from going to penalties to see if they could make it to the finals. And so absolutely, Arsenal wants to get back to that level, and they made some key signings to help them. They signed Mariana Caldente, which is a massive signing from Barcelona. She can play on the wing, but I think if you need her to, she could also play centrally, which I think is perfect for Arsenal. Arsenal, of course, got Daphne van Damselaar, who I mentioned before. I think it is never a bad thing to have another keeper who can challenge your number one. And I wouldn't even be surprised if by the end of the season, Van Damselaar was now the starting goalkeeper for Arsenal. You never know. And then they got Rosa Kafaji, who we got to see, like I got to see, because BK Hacken, where she used to play, was in Chelsea's group last year. And so I got to see her firsthand and see the difficulties she brought to other teams' defenses. And so another player who I won't be surprised if by the end of the season, she is starting more games for Arsenal. I think the signings they made helped. I think similar to what I mentioned about Bayern, can Arsenal get the goals? They lost Miedema, who used to be their top striker, but was sort of phased out last year. And so I think goals is always going to be a big thing. Who's going to be the most clinical in front of net? We've seen some difficulties with Alessia Russo and Stina Blackstenius. And so you never know. But in terms of this matchup between Bayern and Arsenal, this game is happening in Germany, in Munich. And so I've been so impressed with Bayern's ability to score this season. I think their confidence is at an all-time high right now. So I'm going to give the edge to Bayern for winning that game. Next, there's Hammarby versus St. Pölten. Now, this is actually a Group D matchup, but it is happening at the same time as the Arsenal versus Bayern game. These two teams, look, they got the tough draw with Manchester City and Barcelona in their group. I think everyone initially is going to feel like Manchester City and Barcelona are going to make it out. If you're Hammarby and St. Pölten, though, if you want a chance, it's this matchup that you're looking at, right? It's this matchup that you're hoping to get 6 points out of. Hammarby arguably has the best fan base in the tournament. They knocked out Benfica during the qualifiers. Benfica had been a team that had been like consistently making Champions League the past few years. So I think no doubt Hammarby is going to come into this tournament with some confidence, feeling quite good about themselves being able to knock out Benfica. Unfortunately, similar to Twente, Hammarby has lost some players that would have been really cool to see in this tournament, like Madeline Yanogi, Matilda Vinberg, Julia Rotter, Hamano, and Karakuni Cross. But look, even despite losing those players, they still qualified to this stage. So it tells you they still got really good talent on their squad. And so let's see how they do. With St. Pölten, this is their third straight year making Champions League group stage. So they're clearly making a name for themselves as a staple in this tournament. They're going to be looking to want to improve from last year, where they finished last in their group, in a group where really it wasn't clear who was going to come out second. Everyone sort of knew Lyon was going to finish first in that group, but between Prague, St. Pölten, and SK Braun, it wasn't clear. And so I think St. Pölten would have been definitely disappointed that they finished last in their group. So I think if you're St. Pölten, your goals right now is to just do better than that, right? Try and at least finish third. Don't finish last, show some improvement from last year. And I think they'd probably be pretty happy with that, as well as, put up a fight, make things difficult for the other teams in this group. In terms of a prediction, I got to go with Hammarby on this one. I do think Hammarby is playing at home. That crowd really is like a 12th woman on the field. And so, yeah, I got to go with Hammarby on this one for the win. Then we got Vålerenga versus Juventus. Now, these are the other two teams who are part of Group C with Arsenal and Bayern. Juventus, congrats to them. They had a disappointing Champions League last year, not qualifying for the group stages. And so I'm happy to see them back in the tournament. They lost some players, and so I wasn't sure how they were going to do. Happy to see them make it through. And they are going to be riding a high. I think I described Hammarby as riding a high. I think that Juventus is absolutely going to be riding a high after they eliminated Paris Saint-Germain from the tournament. Huge. Paris Saint-Germain had been in the tournament every year for, I think, about the past 6-7 years. And so you kind of assume they are going to be there, and Juventus knocked them out, beating them both times. I think they ended up winning 5-2 on aggregate. So it was not even close. And so I'm excited to see how Juventus is going to do in this group. I think if you're them, why not, right? Why can't you finish top two? I think they're going to be feeling quite confident. And they've made some additions to replace who they lost, with Hannah Bennison, Amelie Vansgaard, and someone I really liked who played for Hoffenheim, which is Paulina Krumbiegel. And so I'm excited to see them play. I haven't gotten a chance to see them too much so far, and so I can't wait to see them next week. Now, in terms of Vålerenga, this is their first time making the Champions League group stage game, so congratulations to them. They're a very strong Norwegian side. They won the league last year, and as of right now, they look poised to win this year as well. I think they're about 11 points above second place, so they're dominating the league right now. And so, yeah, I'm very excited to see how they do. Similar to like the Dutch teams as well as the Swedish teams, I really like seeing these Norwegian teams in this tournament. They're very hard to play against. They never back down. I love that about teams that don't feel scared against top competition. SK Brand was one of the teams that I was like a favorite for me watching them last year, and how they did against Lyon. And so if Vålerenga can come in and bring that type of performance as well, that'll be really great to see. And it's cold. It's hard to play in Norway. And so I think they can have a little bit of like a home field advantage if they're used to playing in that climate. And so you never know what they could do. And so I don't think that Juventus should take anything lightly, although, yeah, I think this game is actually happening in Norway. So yeah, you never know. Home field advantage. Maybe Vålerenga can try and steal a point or get all 3 points. That would be really interesting. That would kind of flip things on its head a bit in this group. So that would be interesting to see. And last thing I'll point out with Vålerenga is they're probably going to be the most informed team, because they've played 21 games so far, obviously with Norway having a different sort of season than the other European teams. So they can also try and look to use that to their advantage. Now, finally, the last game. and which, look, obviously I'm a Chelsea fan, but I have to say Barcelona versus Manchester City is the game I am most looking forward to next week. Manchester City is this team is described as playing, I guess, the most similar to Barcelona in terms of this possession based attractive football. And so, okay, let's see them. Let's put them up against the team who is basically mastered that style of play in Barcelona. Now, Barcelona, of course, dominant. They're the reigning Champions League winners. They've made the finals the last 4 years, and three of them they have won, including the last two versus Wolfsburg and Lyon. So, of course, I think most people probably come into this tournament thinking Barcelona are favorites again, although I do think there are some other teams that are going to give them a run for their money. Now, I talked about who Wolfsburg lost. Their loss was, of course, Barcelona's gain, specifically Eva Paier. And this is exactly the striker that Barcelona needed. It's hard to find many weaknesses with Barcelona, but I would say last year that striker position, that number 9 position, was one of them. We were kind of seeing them pigeonhole other players into that position, mainly Salma Paruelo, who obviously scored a lot of goals, but I do think she's more of a winger. We even saw Alexia Putellas at some points playing in that position, which is like, no, like why? You don't need her there. And so them being able to get Eva Paier was a huge signing for them. They also signed Ellie Roebuck, who I think, some of the performances from Kata Cole are a little bit suspect, I think, especially some of the mistakes I've seen her make have often come from her trying to play out the back and turning it over. And one of the things that Ellie Roebuck is actually considered one of her strengths is her ability to play with the ball at her feet and play out the back. And so, similar to what I said about Daphne Van Damselaar, it would be very interesting to see if by the end of the season, if Ellie Roebuck was able to maybe surpass Kata Cole as the number 1 goalkeeper on the team. Now, they've also gotten a big player from Benfica, Kika Nazareth. I love this player. I kind of selfishly wish she had signed for Chelsea. I think this is a huge signing for Barcelona. She's still quite young. And so what better environment to come up in than surrounded by players like Aitana Bonmati. And so, yeah, this is a great signing for them as well. I would say maybe the area that I think they could have done a better job at in upgrading would be their back line defensively. I think we've seen them play players in the fullback position that are not natural fullbacks, like Rolfo as well as Esme Brutes. And then I think, Irina Paredes is getting up there in age, and sometimes she's also making some errors. And so if there is a weak point in Barcelona, which is hard to say, I would maybe say it's that back line. So it'll be interesting to see what a team that has Bunny Shaw and Viv Miedema could do. The firepower they have up top is incredible. I think that with Manchester City, one of the things I'm curious about is what kind of formation and lineup they're going to be using. There's still some questions about whether Viv Miedema has been used in the right position, and moving forward, is she going to be used in the right position? I think there are many people who rightfully still feel like Viv Miedema's best position is in the number 9 striker role. Of course, she's scored the most goals in WSL history playing in that position. And so to bring her in to Manchester City, and now you've got her sort of playing in a position that maybe you'd want Jill Roord to be playing in, who Jill Roord, of course, has just returned from her ACL injury. But, and so I'm just thinking, like, long term, when Roord is healthy, is that really who you want Viv Miedema to be competing against? Because that's not Miedema's natural position. And so you can argue that Roord is going to be better at that position than Miedema is going to be. And so I actually thought that Miedema was going to be more like another striker. And so Bunny doesn't have to play every game. And so there'll be matches where Viv will do that. There's only been 2 WSL matches so far. And so absolutely that can happen. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Gareth Taylor is able to put out there. In terms of a prediction, this is a tough one. Now, Manchester City is playing at home. They're playing in the Joy Stadium. I As much as I think it would be really exciting to see Barcelona not win. More so, not because of like being a hater or anything, but more so just because they are the favorites, right? They are the team that everyone expects to win. And so for them to lose the first match, I think would give a lot of teams in the tournament some confidence of like, oh, okay, maybe Champions League title trophy is for the taking. And so I would love to kind of see something like that, even a draw. But I think I'm going to go with Barcelona getting the win. Manchester City, this is their first time making Champions League in like 3 years. They haven't played this level of competition in a while. And I think that there's only so much preparation you can do. You kind of need to face them. I think a perfect example is Chelsea. The first time they played Barcelona in the Champions League final, they were absolutely kicked in the teeth. They lost 4-0. It wasn't even close. And now every time Chelsea has played Barcelona since then, which is 4 times, they've done better, including beating Barcelona in Barcelona last year, right? So the more exposure you get to these top teams, the better you can do. And Manchester City's hasn't been really facing this top competition. They've only been facing WSL teams. And so I think that for that reason, I might give Barcelona the edge at home. I think anything may happen in the return leg, but for this game, I'm going to give Barcelona the win. So there it is. Those were my previews of the upcoming matches as well as predictions on who's going to win. So just to put that up there, I've got Lyon beating Galatasaray, a draw between Roma and Wolfsburg, Chelsea beating Real Madrid, a draw between Celtic and FC Twente, Bayern versus Arsenal, going to go with the Bayern win, Hammarby beating St. Pölten, Juventus getting the win over Vålerenga, and finally, Barcelona getting the win over Manchester City. Now, I actually don't even know if I mentioned that Juventus would beat Vålerenga, but I'm mentioning it now that is my prediction, is Juventus to beat Vålerenga and for Twente and Celtic to draw each other, because I also don't think I mentioned that earlier. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this preview video for the upcoming Champions League games. Let me know what you think about the groups that have been drawn together. Who do you think are the favorites to win? Thank you so much, of course, for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.